As soon as Sarah confirms that the live stream is on, then we can get started. Thank you for your patience.
Thanks.
The meeting is live.
You can proceed, Councillor Michaud. The meeting has gone live.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I think we're just going to start pretty much where we left off. Aaron, we'll start with the city. You have more witnesses to finish off your case, Aaron?
Yes, good morning.
Okay, we'll start with you. Thanks.
I'd like to call Sal Spatel to testify this morning. If he could please be sworn in.
Hi, good morning, Sal. Do you mind raising your right hand? Do you swear from the information you're going to provide to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming to speak today.
Welcome.
How long have you lived nearby to Duke Street East?
I've lived in the neighborhood since 2010.
Okay. And what could you tell me about what you've observed during that time?
Throughout the years, and particularly, I guess more recently, throughout the last 5+ years, my family and I observed a number of different issues and activities associated with 249 Duke. In particular, some cases, late at night, we've heard screaming and yelling or fighting in front of the house itself. During the day, we've seen activity of vehicles pulling up either in front of the house or sometimes on the neighboring Cameron Street, where the occupant of the vehicle would sometimes leave the vehicle, go into 249 Duke for 5 to 10 minutes or so, and come back to their vehicle and leave. Or in other instances, an individual from 249 Duke would come to the vehicle. For a few minutes, there'd be some sort of an exchange, and then the individual would go back into 249 Duke, and the vehicle would leave. On one instance, which did report to the police, 2 individuals went into 249 Duke and came back to their vehicle, which was parked on Cameron Street. They appeared intoxicated, and which is why I called the police and then drove away, which of course was concerning to myself. And other instances where we've seen males in vehicles either circle the neighborhood and stop on Cameron Street or on Duke Street, pick up an individual, a female from 249 Duke Street, and return anywhere from 30 minutes to 60 minutes later for that female to leave the vehicle and go back into 249 Duke Street. Seeing a number of what appeared to be intoxicated individuals or in some form of delirium, walking either to or from 249 Duke Street. And I guess it might have been last summer, middle of the night, for a few nights, there was a dog barking nonstop from the backyard, and we also saw the dog. I must have, during the day, got out from the backyard, still had the leash attached to it. It was a pit bull terrier walking through the neighborhood without its owner. Those are the main types of activities we've seen, myself and my family, associated with the house, and it's been on a number of occasions. that have obviously raised concern for myself and my family.
Did any incident result from that dog being off leash?
I was watching from my porch. I didn't want to approach the dog. There was a couple that were walking down Cameron Street, and they approached the dog, and I believe I saw them take it by the leash and start knocking on doors, asking if anybody knew who owned the dog. And then I saw them walk towards 249 Duke.
Okay. So how has this property affected your family?
It's made us certainly uncomfortable, particularly at the front of our house. I have young children. I don't let them play in front of our house without myself or my wife present, or watching them the whole time. My kids also get picked up by the bus for school in the morning. I don't let them go to the bus stop on their own. Either myself or my wife are out there with them. And my kids are also aware of the individuals that go back and forth between 249 Duke Street and the surrounding area, to the point where they will come closer to me or point out to me when they see someone that they recognize as someone who perhaps is not in a lucid or mental state, that they could see the person. It makes them uncomfortable. And so, to have my kids be fearful, and myself and my wife be fearful of being free and uncomfortable in our front of our house, that's a big part of what it's done for myself and my family. And we just generally stay away from that house, is not to have any sort of interactions or potential altercations with any of the individuals there.
Have you brought any of the issues to the attention of the landlord?
No, I have not.
Okay. Do you know
I've not-
anything? Go ahead.
Sorry. I've met the landlord once because she was talking to one of my neighbors. And any other times where there have been instances, I haven't felt comfortable going up to the house and asking the occupants, whom are the ones that make myself and my family feel uncomfortable, for the landlord's contact information.
Have you seen the police at this address?
Yes, many times, as well as EMS, ambulance. And that's certainly one of the things that makes us uncomfortable, is the number of times that the police or ambulance have had to go to that house. We are certainly aware of and witnessed the raid that occurred at that house this past February, I believe. And we obviously weren't aware that it was going to happen, and we heard through the news, as I'm sure everybody else did, what the results were of that raid, which wasn't a surprise to myself or my family, given the activity that we've seen there and what we've suspected was going on in that house.
I'd like to now ask you a few questions about the tenants, and if you have any knowledge of the tenants. But before we do so, I ask that we move into a closed session, because I do believe that you have some knowledge and some personal identifiable information may be discussed.
through the chair. The meeting is again live.
Okay, we'll carry on. Mr. Ellis, I'll let you go ahead now.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today, sir. Can I ask, have you noticed a difference in the demeanor of 249 in the last couple of weeks?
In the last couple of weeks, I haven't seen anywhere as much activity as previous periods of time. It's been relatively quiet from my experience.
Are you aware that there was a tenant evicted from 249 on June 25th?
No, I was not.
Okay. You stated about another property, 4648 Cameron Street. Has there been a lot of police at that address in your experience since you've lived there?
Not once. Once since the new owner has taken ownership of the building, and prior to that, not as many times as at 249 Duke, but there were a few instances of police going to that address.
Did somebody die at that address this year or last year?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
At 4648 Cameron Street, not that I'm aware of.
Is there any other properties that are problem properties in the neighborhood?
Yes, there are.
Could you tell us what addresses those are?
I believe the one that I'm familiar with, I believe is 20, it might be 24 Cameron Street. It might be the address.
So would you agree that this area is not an affluent area? That there's a more...
I would suggest it's a mixed neighborhood if I were to characterize it.
Yes. Would you agree that this neighborhood has had issues with police over the years more for criminal activity other than just at 249 Duke Street?
The main two addresses are 249 Duke and 24 Cameron that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of police activity at any other properties. Those are the two that I'm aware of, and from my experience, the majority of them have been related to 249 Duke Street.
Okay. And when you've witnessed these, and I have to say alleged, but witnessed these alleged criminal activities, have you called the police on these activities or bylaw?
I've called the police and notified them, particularly where I think there's an opportunity for them to do anything about it, or where I have any information that is relevant to them, where they could look into it further, whether it's a license plate, the appearance of individuals, or if I've heard anything threatening. I've called the police about it, but for the first several years of me living in the neighborhood, I called more regularly, particularly when I saw some sort of interaction that I thought was illegal, and realizing that those interactions lasted less than 5 minutes, and then those individuals were gone. I stopped calling. I didn't see the benefit to call police and have them waste their resources coming to a location where there wasn't going to be anything observed at that time, and I didn't believe that there was any additional information I had to provide.
Okay. From the calls that you have made, let's say in the last 5 years, are you aware of any charges that have been laid by bylaw or the police against tenants at 249 Duke Street?
No, I'm not. I haven't received any follow-up from police on any of the phone calls that I had made.
Okay. If you could just give me 1 second. My apologies. If I could just have an indulgence for a second. Are you aware that the tenants, have you ever rented the property before?
I've rented properties before, yes.
Are you aware that the tenants at 249 Duke Street are part of the Residential Tenancies Act and the Landlord Tenant Board?
I haven't looked into that in terms of what sort of act that they would be applicable to.
Okay. So you're not aware of what it takes to try and get a bad tenant out that's causing trouble in the neighborhood?
Not any personal or direct experience with that, no.
Okay. I'll be honest, I think that those are all my questions for this witness.
Okay. Are there any more witnesses for the city?
Yes, I don't have any further questions for Mr. Sal Spatel on a redirect basis, so we can move on to another city witness.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Spatel.
I'd like to call Helen Phylactu to provide oral testimony at this time, if she could please be sworn in or affirmed.
Hi, good morning. Do you mind raising your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the information you're going to provide is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
Who are you employed by?
City of Kitchener,
What's your position?
the manager of licensing,
How long have you held that position?
approximately 4.5 years.
Can you briefly explain what your general duties entail?
I oversee the administration and the enforcement of our licensing bylaws, which include business licensing, lodging houses, but also includes marriage licensing and lottery licensing. And I manage staff that include a municipal law enforcement officer and 3 licensing officers.
Can you tell the committee about Chapter 553 of the Municipal Code?
Chapter 553 of the Municipal Code of Kitchener is a bylaw that regulates lodging houses within the city of Kitchener.
And what, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, the bylaw deals with lodging houses, which includes a dwelling or part thereof containing 1 or more lodging units designed to accommodate 4 or more residents in total. The residents can share the common areas of the dwelling other than the lodging units and do not appear to function as a household.
Okay. And what kinds of inspections can your staff perform under the bylaw?
The inspections we have tied to the licensing process for the bylaw includes an inspection by municipal enforcement under the property standards officer, fire prevention, and may include inspections that the manager deems necessary. So if we required a building inspection, we could add that to the license. We also allow for the business licensing inspector to do inspections on the property to ensure it's licensed.
Is there a process that you have to do each year involving the neighbors of lodging houses?
Yes, lodging houses are an annually renewed license. So as part of that annual process and prescribed within the bylaw, we send out a public notice soliciting comments on the operation and the impact of the lodging house from owners, occupants, and tenants of properties within 60 meters of the lodging house property.
Can you explain what type of information is collected from that public notice?
So the public notice is pretty open-ended. So it's just a letter saying, please provide any comments. So we receive comments both in support of lodging houses in neighborhoods, and also we receive comments that outline some concerns that people have on certain properties.
Okay. Is there a certain area or distance from the property?
60 meters.
Okay. How many lodging house licenses does the City of Kitchener have?
There's currently 18 licensed properties.
Okay. And how many lodging houses have you asked be revoked in your time as manager?
Including this property, it will be 2.
Okay. I'd like now to move to some questions specific to this property. Can you please start by describing what was happening regarding this property and what course of actions you were considering?
Yep, so it came to my attention that the property had changed ownership and that there was a gap in the licensing. So I asked our business licensing inspector to reach out to the new owner in 2017. I started in 2016 to ask the owner and to help get the new owner into compliance with the bylaw. My understanding was that there were some delays in getting the license or getting the property licensed over 2017 and 2018, and finally became licensed in 2019.
Were there any actions that you were considering after? Yes, let's just start with that. Were there any actions that you took?
So when I followed up with the business licensing inspector to ask where the results were with the lodging house at 240, or the alleged at this time lodging house at 249 Duke Street, she had told me that it had fallen off her radar and that she would reach back out to the owner. She did, and based on the amount of time that had passed from the initial contact to the time she had recontacted her and was trying to get into compliance, I had said if there's no further action or no compliance taken, we should consider laying charges on the property as it is operating without a license.
Did you instruct your staff to do anything at this point?
Yeah. Further to what I was saying in the previous response, I asked the business licensing inspector to look into the license and to work in partnership with the property standards officer if an inspection needed to be completed. And if they could not get the property into compliance, then to reach out to legal and we could look at proceeding with charges.
Okay. So was an inspection completed?
Sorry?
Was an inspection completed
I
by
believe,
one of your licensing inspectors?
yes, in combination with the property standards
Thank you.
officer.
Okay. So what happened after that inspection?
I believe that once the inspection was completed, in following up with the business licensing inspector, it was confirmed that it was still operating as a lodging house and that they were going to proceed with getting it licensed. A notice was sent to Ms. Tambor to get the property into compliance.
Thank you. So eventually the property did become licensed.
In 2019, I believe it was October, but I would have to confirm that. Ms. Tambor did submit the application. And in 2020, the license was issued.
Thank you. So moving on, you mentioned that as a part of the lodging house licensing process, you solicit the neighbors' comments. What type of comments have you received beginning with 2019?
So I receive comments outside of that time frame that we send the notice as well, but it's similar type of calls that I receive both as part of that process and outside of that process. So it's a range of comments that I get. So the comments include alleged criminal activity, Some of the examples that were provided to myself was suspected prostitution, drug use and drugs sales, noise complaints, yelling and screaming of visitors and tenants, vehicular break-ins based on the tenants or their guests, traffic complaints on the number of vehicles that are on the property, some complaints about the standard of the property, and complaints about animal control, such as a dog off leash or a dog unmuzzled.
You mentioned that you receive comments all year round. How is that different for other properties?
For other licensed lodging houses, I assume?
Yes, like what do you mean when you said, I do receive comments all year round?
So for the other lodging houses, it is rare that I receive any complaints throughout the year. I may receive a complaint during the renewal process, but even then, it's low.
So after you received these complaints, what was your course of action?
Depending on what the complaint was, it was usually sent to the appropriate enforcement agency. So for example, any complaints about a dog unmuzzled or a dangerous dog, I would reach out to our partners at the Kitchener-Waterloo Humane Society. If it was a suspected criminal activity, I sent it out to Waterloo Regional Police Services. Complaints we received on cars being parked too long or anything like that, I would send to our partners in bylaw.
Did you have any conversations with the owner of the property?
So I've had a couple different conversations with the owner of the property. The first conversation would have been around the time in 2019 when she was obtaining the license. She reached out because she needed an extension. She was unable to make it to City Hall on the date. I believe the conversation was that she had an injury and she could not find parking that was close to City Hall. I granted that extension, and she did come in to apply after that extension. After that, I have reached out. Again, the license wasn't issued until May 2020. I reached out to her in November 2020, again this year in January, I believe February and March.
So how many times did you attempt to speak with, did you speak with Ann Hamilton or Ann Tamber about any of the complaints?
So do you want the attempts, or do you want the number of times you've actually spoken? So attempts, there were several attempts. So there was the November one, I sent a notice that went not picked up. And then there was 2 phone calls that were not answered. I emailed her, I believe in January, and it went to her junk mail, but she did respond to me and we did speak on the phone at that point.
Okay. Moving along, do you reach out to the police as part of your job?
I do. I work with police regularly as part of my role as the manager of licensing. So not only in regards to lodging houses, but with any other concerns that they would have on licensed properties or businesses within the city. In terms of lodging houses, we only reach out to police if we receive complaints that have any, and we're contemplating any further action on the property. If we don't receive any complaints or we don't receive anything that would have police involvement, then we would not reach out to Waterloo Regional Police Services on that property.
Did you ask the police about calls for service at 249 Duke Street East?
I did. So I asked police to provide the number of calls to service since the change in ownership, so since 2016.
And can you please share what the number was?
77 calls to service.
Is there something unusual about that number of calls for service at this particular lodging house as compared to other lodging houses?
We would consider this high in terms of the number of calls. The next highest that I know of in terms of calls to service was on a previous property that was licensed as a lodging house that we went through licensing tribunal. And over a similar 4-year span, there were 49 calls to service.
You mentioned earlier that there were 2 licenses that you've asked be brought to committee. And you just stated too that there was a previous lodging house tribunal. What was that number that you said were for calls of service of that other property that you recommended to committee?
It was 49 calls to serve in a 4-year span.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask the committee administrator to please put up on the screen the article from the record. It's located at tab A in the hearing materials, number 6. Can everybody see this? I just want to confirm with the committee administrator.
Yes, it should be viewable to the entire meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Phylactu, can you tell the committee about this article?
Yep, so WRPS had been involved with some of the complaints that we were receiving from the neighborhood. They were included in the email exchange. So they knew we were working with this property. So they had contacted us in January, end of January, and asked us to stay out of the property for the meantime, and they didn't give any more information. So of course, our officers did not proceed with going into the property. This article came out, I believe it says February 19th, stating that drugs, weapons, and cash were seized from this property at Duke and Cameron. We heard from the members of the neighborhood on the day that the seize was happening, that it was happening. And it was later confirmed through Waterloo Regional Police that it was in fact at 249 Duke Street East.
Thank you. Could I please just have the committee administrator scroll down if there was more to the article? Is that the end of the article? Yes, okay. Thank you. Is there anything else, Ms. Phylactu, that you'd like to say about this article?
There is not.
Through the chair to the committee administrator, you can please remove the photos now, or the article. Thank you. So Ms. Phylactu, you already mentioned that you were aware that there were complaints to the bylaw department at the City of Kitchener, and there was police involvement at the property. Are you aware of any other city departments that were involved?
The only other city departments I know were involved would be fire prevention, and that was through our inspection process.
Thank you. So once you reviewed this article and as manager of licensing, what was the next step that you considered?
So given, so that article came out in February. I had spoken to Anne and we talked about conditions on the license in January, and we had been hearing complaints leading up to those conditions and prior to the property being licensed. So at that point, after all this information had come out, we had decided that we would move forward with bringing this to the licensing hearing tribunal.
Okay. Through the chair to the committee administrator, I'd like to ask that the letter that the manager just mentioned about conditions, it's be put up on the screen. It's located at tab B in the folder entitled Conditions, and it's under item number 1. Thank you. Ms. Phylactou, can you please tell us about the conditions in this letter?
Yep, so as part of the conditions that we went through, the rationale that we decided, so to continue with the creating and posting of the house rules and to ensure an on-site person adheres to these conditions. So that's trying to give some control back to the owner and the on-site person to create rules on the house, knowing some of the concerns, to ensure the tenants are aware of the license conditions and the house rules. So again, this is making sure the tenants understand what the consequences could be of not following these, to try and mitigate some of the noise issues or the guests, the issues about guests and traffic, to try and keep the front door closed to ensure compliance with it, to continue to stay in compliance with property standards, animal control bylaws. That was in regards to the dog off leash and building code, fire code, criminal code, to try and reduce the number of calls that were happening on the property, to ensure there's a proper disposal in the property. That's to help with the safety of the tenants, and for no additional accessory units to be erected on the property, and if they're not in accordance with the city zoning bylaw.
What does that last condition that you just said about accessory units, what does that mean?
So that no additional, like a trailer or someone's living in it inside the property, on the property, was being permitted unless it was meeting our zoning bylaw.
Okay. And you mailed this letter to the property owner in Hamilton?
And, that's right. Mailed and emailed.
Mailed and emailed. And on what date or around what time? Was it similar to the date of your letter?
Yes, I believe the email was sent on January 6th, and it would have gone in the mail the same day.
Okay. Did you receive a response from Ms. Tamber?
I did.
Okay. And what was the response?
I believe the response was asking who I was, to confirm who I was, and I responded to Ms. Tambor.
Okay. And were you trying to make any other attempts to communicate with her, or what happened after that?
So I believe after that we did connect a couple times, and I kept her in the loop with what our next steps were going to be. So we did connect after some back and forth. I advised her that we were going to go to council, and what we would be requesting and what the date of council would be, and also let her know what the outcome of council was. I followed up with her as well.
Okay. Did she agree with the conditions?
She understood the conditions. I don't know if there was no formal, she agreed or did not agree.
Okay. So she said to you that she would follow the conditions? Or no? There was no statement made like that?
There was no statement made.
Okay. Okay. When did you make the decision to call this committee or bring it to this tribunal?
The decision was made at near the end of February 2021.
Okay. And why did you decide to recommend this matter to committee?
Given the pattern of complaints that we were receiving and that they did not seem to be on a decline, and the impact that it was having on the community, in addition to the number of calls to service that we were receiving, I thought that at that point it was important for it to come to committee for decision.
Thank you. I believe those are all my questions for this witness.
Thank you.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. Can I ask, you stated that you decided to come to the committee to revoke my client's license at the end of February.
So I come with a recommendation and the committee makes the decision. But yes, in February, we made the decision to put a report forward to the committee, to council, to appoint a committee to hear the case.
And that report, you stated in your March email that you would provide that report to my client, correct?
I have to bring up that email.
I believe it was March 6th or March 8th was the date of the email.
I believe I said I'll keep you up to date with the outcome of the report going forward on March 8th.
Okay. So you've never provided that report, a copy of that report to my client?
The report is available online on our website. It's all public information, but it was not requested and I did not state that I would provide it.
Okay. But you weren't looking to revoke my client's license before the end of February?
So our first attempt is never to revoke a license. And prior to that, we did not have a discussion about revoking the license, no.
Wasn't the January 6th notice letter that you gave her telling her that you were going to revoke her license if she didn't comply with the conditions?
That's right.
Okay. So, but you have discussed with Ms. Camber that you would look to revoke her license if she did not comply with your conditions?
That I could look to come to the committee to request that, yes.
Okay. So since the end of February, how many complaints have you had regarding 249 Duke Street?
So from February until the council meeting in March, I received 14 complaints.
Wow. Okay. And are those public knowledge complaints?
So we don't typically put our complaints out to public, but we do receive. I also received an additional 6 once we put out the 2021 renewal process letter.
Okay. And would my client be privy to these complaints to know what these complaints are about?
She would be, yes.
Okay. So these 14 complaints just in the last couple months, how many charges have been laid from these complaints?
I can't speak to police as I don't have access to their numbers. Specific to that date range, I don't have that information. Bylaw, I believe there were no charges from bylaw.
So out of the 77 incidences that you stated in your testimony that the police attended at that premises from complaints, how many charges were laid against Miss Tamber or any of the tenants at that location?
Again, I'm not police, so I don't have access to those records.
But how, if you don't have access, did you not request that information when you requested how many occurrences have happened at that location?
I did not request the number of charges.
Can you tell me when you requested how many incidences were at that location from the Waterloo Regional Police?
Sorry, you want me to, how many of these calls were at 249 Duke?
No, when you requested this number of 77.
Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'll just open the email. So I requested the total of number on May 10th, 2021, and received a response from Waterloo Regional Police on May 17th, 2021.
But they did not divulge to you whether anybody had actually been charged at that location.
They did not.
So you introduced the newspaper article regarding the bust from the SWAT team at 249 Duke Street.
Yes.
Were any of the people that were arrested a resident of 249 Duke Street or the owner of 249 Duke Street?
I don't have that information from police.
Okay. Could you tell the panel the purpose of you then presenting that newspaper article?
So the newspaper article was confirming what was seized from 249 Duke Street, which were complaints that we were receiving from the community before that article came out, was that there was suspected drugs and other behaviors happening at that property. So we introduced it as to show that that article did align with that property address. And that is a concern for both the neighbors and the tenants that reside in that property.
So you stated that back in 2017, you started to attempt to try and get this address licensed with the tribunal, or licensed with the lodging license with the city.
I directed my staff to do so, yes.
So did you send out that letter to the community requesting their input to that location in 2017?
I did not.
Did you do it in 2018?
I did not.
Is there a reason that you did not?
It was unlicensed. We don't do it on unlicensed properties.
But you were saying that you were looking to charge Miss Tamber for not having a valid license. You wanted her to get a license. Why would you not get that information before you actually even agreed to give her her first license?
Because we don't solicit the neighborhood on unlicensed properties. We needed to confirm that she was a lodging house and that she was licensed. And then before we issue the first license, we then send out that letter.
Okay, so that would have been 2019.
That's right.
Okay, so in 2019, how many complaints did you have from the neighborhood about that property?
Based on the letter or just complaints in general that I received? Sorry, just clarification on that.
I do both. Both.
Both? Okay, just give me 1 second. I can pull it up. So I have 6 emailed complaints in 2019 between April and June. Sorry, let me just bring up the letters. And 3 letters were sent back based on that letter that was soliciting comments.
Okay. And had you received any complaints about that address from 2016 to 2019?
Sorry, I just need to go back to that. 2016 to 2018, is that the time frame you asked?
Yes.
So I started December 2016, so I wouldn't have information prior to that. But I do not have emails between 17 and 18.
Okay. So when you decided to allow Ms. Tamber to apply for her license in 2019, did you put any conditions on the licensing for her license in 2019?
Not at the time, no.
So she didn't require house rules, anything like that in 2019?
She did not know.
Did you bring it to Ms. Tamber's attention that there had been complaints at the property in 2019?
I did not myself. I don't know if the business licensing inspector did.
Okay. So she received her first license. Then she went to go get her second license in 2020. How many complaints did you have in 2020?
So that's not correct. So she applied for her license in 2019, but it did not get issued until May 2020, as she was still working with property standards. So they had not signed off until 2020. So her license was not issued until 2020. In 2020, I had 15 emails of complaints. And sorry, just give me 1 second. I will pull the other number for you. And overall comments on the, continuing with the renewal based on the letter that I sent out, I received 7 comments.
Okay. So 7 comments caused the letter that you sent January 6th stating that she had to comply with all these conditions?
So 7 comments plus the comments from the previous year, plus the comments we heard throughout the year and the numbers of service and the calls to service, all that together led to the conditions. Yes. Not just based on the 7 complaints.
Okay. So after you instructed Ms. Tamber that she had to comply with these conditions, was there an inspection done to make sure she complied?
After January, I would have to confirm with the other inspection agencies. I did not go in myself.
But you didn't order anybody to go in and inspect to make sure that there was house rules put up and other information?
I would have to confirm it. I did not. I don't believe anyone else went in, but I have to double check the dates of the inspections that Mr. Potvin stated, and I don't believe fire prevention has testified yet, so we'd have to double check with them on the dates. We were also asked to stay out of the property, so I would have specifically asked from WRPS, as I previously stated. So I would have asked officers or our officers to stay out of the property during that time frame.
Would that not have only been until February 18th when the charges were laid?
Yes, at least until that date, yes.
So from February 18th till now, there's been no inspection to see whether or not my client complied?
I don't believe there's been anyone in the property to inspect.
But you have renewed the license.
She has applied for the renewal, yes. It has not.
Didn't you state at the beginning of this hearing that her license is in good standing and has been renewed?
So I said she has renewed the license. It has not been issued.
Oh, I misunderstood at the beginning. Okay. I will go back over the audio. So you state in your letter of January 6th that my client must create and post house rules. Could you give us an example of what those house rules are supposed to be?
That would depend on the property. I mean, we don't give them specifics of what they need to post.
I'm kind of confused because your letter says, based on inspections, calls for service, public comments, staff have determined the conditions will be placed on your license. The condition includes create and post house rules and ensure on-site person adheres to all conditions. Is she supposed to guess at what the house rules are supposed to be?
So her house rules could be, well, she could ask me that question and we could work together on the house rules, or she could take some of the other things that we had mentioned, such as a house rule could be keeping the dog inside or keeping that front door closed, like some of the other items listed on that letter.
You understand that this unit is part of the Residential Tenancies Act, correct?
Yes.
And that Ms. Tamber must adhere to the tenant's rights under the act.
Yes.
And that Ms. Tamber can't force somebody to be an on-site person to adhere to the house rule conditions.
I'm not aware that she cannot have an on-site super based under the residential tenancy or have someone on site adhering to it.
And she can't enforce house rules that are not part of the Residential Tenancies Act. Do you understand? Like, do you know that that's the way it is?
I would have to look into that. I'm not an expert at that.
But you understand that this license can't interfere with the Residential Tenancies Act.
Yes.
Okay. And so I would like to go to your will say statement that's dated May 25th. Would we be able to bring that up? Is that possible to have that brought up?
Aaron, would you possibly know what item tab number that would be?
That would be, it would be under tab A, number 7.
Thank you.
Do you recognize this document?
I do.
Did you create this document?
I did.
Is this a templated document or was this a freshly made document?
This is a freshly made document, but I mirrored it off another will state that I had done.
So it's a template.
It's not a template as in you just fill in the information, but I mirrored another one that I had done.
Okay. And this is for what location that you're asking for the license to be? I believe that your recommendations for the license to be revoked?
For 249 Duke Street East.
Could we go to the last page of this document? Can you read the line that's underlined in your statement?
So it does say 374 Louisa Street, so it was an error.
So was this a templated document or was this a freshly written document?
I'd like to object at this point, Mr. Ellis. She's already answered that question that she perceives a template to be something you just fill in. And she's saying she created the document freshly. But you can ask her again, maybe not using the word template, but just rephrase your question, please.
Okay. Why would you put 374 Louisa Street to have the license revoked if that is not the address that you wrote this on May 25th, 2021?
So that was an error.
And when did you revoke the license for 374 Louisa Street?
I don't have that information in me since this is not about Louisa Street. I believe it was 2019.
Okay. And there was a hearing like this to revoke that license?
There, we went in with a joint submission where the owner agreed to give up the license.
Okay. So, okay, I'm done with that document. Thank you. So, my client has to figure out what the house rules are to comply with the conditions so that her license isn't revoked.
I'd be happy to work with her on coming up with house rules.
Did you instruct her that you were happy to work with her to come up with it?
Not say that specifically.
You just instructed that she must have these house rules in accordance to keep her license.
Yes,
But you at no point in time told her what those house rules needed to be.
I did not.
And were you aware that that there was house rules up in that property before you sent that letter?
Yes,
So you knew there was house rules, but you still made it a condition?
I wanted her to continue having those house rules, yes.
But it doesn't say continue, it says create and post house rules.
It does, that's right, but I did want those to continue.
Did you?
Based on the officer's evidence?
Yeah.
You saw the photos on Tuesday that there were house rules posted in the home.
So you were aware of what the house rules were?
I did not read the house rules.
Okay. So do you understand that lodging houses are part of the RTA?
Yes,
And you agree that it's fair to say that the tenants at 249 Duke Street have all the rights of regular tenants? And is it fair to say that the appellant's ability to evict tenants, set rules, entering their rooms and telling them what to do is subject completely to the RTA?
amongst, I believe, other legislation, but yes.
Would you agree that it would be based on the RTA that Ms. Tamber could not really enforce these rules that were imposed in your letter of January 6th?
I'd like to object at this point again. Mr. Ellis, you have not identified this witness as any expert in law. She is not a lawyer. She is a manager of licensing. Her knowledge of the RTA is like any other lay person in the sense that she knows it's there. She's not going to go into the details about what the legislation says. So could we
But she
please
wrote a letter stating that stuff had to be done that contravenes the act.
maybe you should call an expert testimony and provide that to the committee through an expert witness.
Are you not calling this witness as an expert to the licensing?
She's an expert within the licensing bylaw, which we could, why don't you cross-examine her on the licensing bylaw? That's chapter 553 of the City of Kitchener Municipal Code. She can answer questions on that for you.
I'm asking her questions because she's requiring my client to do stuff that contravenes the Residential Tenancies Act.
Then why don't you show that through your own evidence in chief? When you call witnesses, show that.
Okay. I'm just asking her a question. All she had to say was no.
She's already told you that she's aware that the Residential Tenancies Act exists, that yes, it would probably, as a lodging house, this property would be subject to that, but she's not going to go into depth about what the Residential Tenancies Act, that is not something she needs to do within her job parameters. I mean, this is her jurisdiction is in like what the municipal code says. Ask her some questions about the municipal code then.
I'll move on to my questions. Is it true that the objections you have alleged as the reasons for not renewing Ms. Tamber's license are A, criminal activity, including sale and consumption of drugs, weapons, altercation, sex trafficking, prostitution, B, animal control, aggressive dog off leash and noise from barking, C, increased traffic, noise violations, garbage lot maintenance and garbage? Are those your reasonings for wanting to revoke Ms. Tamber's license?
Those are some of the concerns that we have with it, yes.
And I'm trying to understand the reasoning of the control that my client would have over these incidences.
Sorry, as a property owner, she is responsible for what happens at her property.
Okay. So can you tell me where in the lodging bylaw it states that my client is responsible for all actions of residents or visitors of the property?
The bylaw does not state that.
Thank you. If I could have 1 quick second, I apologize. Have you required Ms. Tamber to install needle disposal units at the residence?
That was a condition on the license.
Of the new license or the old license?
The letter that I sent in January.
So it wasn't required before January 2021?
It was not a requirement that I made in January 2021.
I apologize if I could have one.
Prior to that.
Pardon me?
It was not a condition that I had placed prior to that.
Okay. Would you say that the neighborhood that is in question has an issue with drugs?
I'm not going to speculate on that.
Okay. Is there any other properties in that neighborhood that you have had complaints about?
So I don't unless it's a lodging house, I won't be involved with the property. So there's only one other lodging house, I believe, that's in that area that I licensed. And if you just give me a second, I can let you know if I have received complaints on it. So in 2020, I did not receive any complaints on it, nor did I in 2019.
Could you tell the panel what property that is?
It is 46 Cameron.
24 Cameron is not a licensed lodging house?
Let me just bring up the full list.
But isn't it supposed to be?
Can you repeat the address, Mr. Ellis?
24 Cameron Street?
It is not a licensed lodging house. The property that I was referring to is a different address on Cameron Street.
Okay. So your next objection to my client's license is an aggressive dog and noise from a barking dog? Is that
That was
correct?
one of the things to mitigate, yes.
And has that been mitigated?
I have not received any complaints since that letter went out about the dog.
Okay. How about, okay. The next concern is the breach of the bylaws of the city. Has there been any breaches of the bylaws of the city since you sent out the letter in January?
I would have to confirm with bylaw on that to see if they've received any calls since January.
Are you the individual that's asking this committee to revoke my client's license?
I am making a recommendation to the committee, yes.
And it's based on your letter of January 6th?
That's right, but you're asking for things that happen after January 6th. So I would have to pull the records of a different area. I'm not in bylaw to confirm if they've received calls or not.
But this letter that you sent January 6th that you must comply with these issues in order to keep your license? Can you confirm or deny whether Ms. Tambra has complied with the requirements you have put on this license?
If you give me 1 second, I can pull up some information. So there was an additional complaint, sorry, I stand corrected, about the dog in February. So after that letter came out, as I had already stated, there were complaints from the community about some of the behaviors that were still going on, which I believe were conditions on the license as well. And a lot maintenance complaint about the grass and weeds.
Could you tell us when that was?
Yep, just give me 1 second, sorry. May 28th.
So my client is looking to lose her livelihood of a lodging license for this property because of grass and weeds, a dog barking that she has no control over, that the city controls the Humane Society. And what was the other issue that's still in play?
Sorry, the alleged criminal activities happening?
But it's alleged criminal activities. Is anybody, like, I understand the alleged criminal activities, but is there any criminal activities that have been, that the police, you can't tell me if the police have charged anybody?
That's right. I can't tell you what the police have done other than the confirmed information in February.
Could I have your indulgence? Sorry. Could I suggest that based on your testimony so far, the city's failure to renew this lodging license is not based on fact, but rather on unsupported allegations, anecdotes, innuendo, and desire to be perceived to take action rather than taking constructive action in respect to the actual causes of drug dependency and criminal conduct? Would that be correct?
I'd like to object to this question. It's very, very long. There's a lot of compound questions there. If you could maybe break that down for the manager, please.
Do you have any supported proof of allegations of of constructive action that's causing drug dependency and criminal conduct? Are they just statements that there's a possibility that there's criminal activity going on, or is there any proof that there's criminal activity going on with the residents and the landlord? Or property?
Again, I can't confirm the details from police, but police have confirmed the calls to service and confirmed what happened in February. And I can confirm that there is an ongoing impact on the community based on the number of complaints that are continuing to come in.
Have the complaints lessened in the last 3 weeks?
I received 6 just in the month of June.
Any after June 25th?
Sorry, just bear with me. I have to pull the emails. I do not believe any have come in past June 25th.
And none in July?
No.
Are you aware that Ms. Tamber was able to finally evict through the RTA a problem tenant that has been a problem at that property for a couple of years?
Through you, I am aware of it.
Would that make a difference in your speculation as to the criminal activity at this property?
I can't speculate on what would happen in the future in this property.
Okay. Are you aware that whether my client's license is revoked or renewed, she can't just evict the tenants? The tenants will remain in that property?
We would work with the owner on dates of the license so that we'd work within that time frame.
You would work within that time frame for my client to evict the tenants?
If she needed to evict tenants, then yes, we would work with her in terms of time frame, yes.
But okay, I understand that the city's councillor has said that you don't have any legal experience about the RTA, but under what premise would my client be able to evict these tenants?
Okay. For clarification, Mr. Ellis, I didn't say she didn't have any legal experience. I just said she wasn't a lawyer, then she's not going to interpret the legislation for you. But continue.
How would my client evict these tenants if her license is revoked? Under what premise?
I don't have the details. I don't know the tenant of how the process would go at the tenant board.
So if you revoke my client's license, the community is not going to change because she will have no legal premise to remove these tenants.
I don't know what the legality would be about removing them or how long it would take or what the process would be.
In summary, would you agree the city's reluctance to renew the subject license is out of concern for community safety?
That would be part of it, yes.
What would the other part be?
It would be for tenant safety as well.
For the tenant's safety?
Yeah, there are activities happening in the property itself, as you saw with the Cs, that could have put the other tenants at risk as well.
Could you outline for us programs and accommodations the city has arranged to deal with the alleged drug use by these tenants?
We have not arranged alternate accommodations.
But you are prepared to have the license revoked at the end of this hearing?
That would be up to the committee to make that decision.
Could you outline for us a plan the city has to accommodate or deal with the alleged criminal activity in the area and the community specific that allegedly is only arising from this lodging house?
I don't know if the Waterloo Regional Police have a plan for that area. I can't speculate to that.
So it is fair to say that the concern for community safety extends to the refusal of the license for this lodging house and potentially move to alleged problems on the street?
I did not suggest moving it to the street, but safety concerns for the community is part of it, yes.
Would you agree that the failure to renew this license will have no impact on the various complaints alleged at the city?
I'm not going to speculate on that. I can't predict the future of what would happen.
Could I suggest that Ms. Tamber has met all the requirements the licensing process has asked for?
In terms of the requirements to apply for a license?
To renew the license?
To renew the license, you did submit the paperwork, yes, and the payment.
And what other requirements is there for the renewal of that license?
We received the renewal comments, and then we do inspections on the property again annually.
Okay. And those inspections didn't get done before this hearing?
I think she just applied after the last hearing at the end of June, so I don't think there's been a scheduled inspection yet.
I think those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ellis and Ms. Blackwell. At this time, it's 11:45. Aaron, do you have more witnesses?
Well, just, I may have had a question for Helen on redirect.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's not a problem. Just, if I could just have a moment, please. Would it be, I just want to know.
Take a 15-minute recess or a 10-minute?
I think that would be helpful, just to take a 10-minute break so people may use the washroom if that's okay.
Good idea. Okay, yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Through the chair, just before we recess, if you needed any advice from your tribunal lawyer at this moment, it would be a great opportunity to do that if you just wanted to reach out to Jennifer if that was required. That being said, we will recess for 15 minutes, and if you need any assistance, please reach out to Jennifer in the time being.
Okay, thanks. think we have about 1 more minute till noon, and then I think we should start.
Madam Chair, can I just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would at some point like to speak with our legal advisor for the panel.
Okay.
I don't want to stop things now. I'm just wondering if we could either stay on at the end of this morning or come back early, 5 or 10 minutes earlier and have our discussion then.
Sure. Jennifer, as Jennifer's on yet, I'm not sure. What would work best for you? We could, when we break for lunch, we could stay on a few minutes prior to lunch.
Yeah,
That would be fine with me.
Okay. Okay, so we'll do that then.
yeah, thank you.
I'm not sure when we're breaking for lunch at this point. I'll have to kind of do a consensus here, but I'm thinking about 12:30, 12:45. We break for a lunch.
It's fine.
Does
It's
that
up.
work?
Sorry. There I am. Sorry. Hello.
Hi,
Excuse me. Sorry.
Okay.
If I may please interject, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that I was just going to finish a few questions with the manager of licensing. And
Yeah.
then there was one more civilian witness and he is available right now. He's logging in.
Okay.
I just want, and I think he'll be quick. Like, I think we'll probably be able to do it by around 12:45, like 1
Sorry,
o'clock.
Ms. Mock, I wonder if we should just wait until Mr. Ellis, make sure that we have him here before we have discussions about timing. I don't know if he's returned yet.
Oh, I thought everybody's on. Sorry, my apologies. Well, why don't we start the resume and then we'll have this discussion and then you can continue with Ms. Flacco and your.
I was just interjecting because I didn't really want a decision to be made before you knew what I had to bring. So I'm just, I just wanted to interject at that moment.
Okay.
But we're not back fully yet. So I'll just
Okay.
minimize at the moment. I just wanted you to know, that's all.
Okay, so we'll wait till Ms. Goldrup, are we back live? Are we?
We are still
Through the
live.
chair, yes, the meeting.
Sorry,
We
we
can?
are. Yeah, Mr. Ellis, I believe I saw you unmute, so I think he is also returned. Do you mind just
Yeah.
confirming?
No, I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so before we resume, let's talk about our lunch break, which I think will go. Ms. Mogok, you want to speak to Ms. Flacco again, and then you have one more witness to call, and then we'll break for lunch. So it'll be around 12:45, 1 o'clock. Mr. Ellis, does that work for you?
That does.
Okay. Okay, let's carry on then. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome back, Ms. Flacco. Mr. Ellis asked you, and actually for the record, is Ms. Flacco still sworn in or affirmed in her testimony?
She would be from the previous, but if you would like me to do it again to confirm.
Nope. I'm
Okay.
good. I just wanted to make sure because we just had a break, that's all. Mr. Ellis had asked you about the period between 2016 and 17 for the period that this lodging house was unlicensed. Is it the owner's responsibility to apply for a license under the bylaw?
It is, yes.
Okay. Does an owner have to wait to be contacted by the licensing department before they can make an application?
They do not.
And what is the usual process for licensing applications if they have a license and they're trying to get it renewed? Is there some sort of inspection that's required?
On lodging houses, yes, there's an annual property standards and fire inspection.
Okay, thank you. That completes my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flacco. Mr. L, so we will call, Ms. Nugget, you can call your next witness then?
Yes, thank you. His name is Robert Geising, and I believe he is logged in. He's a civilian witness.
Hi, Robert. Are you able to unmute and you have logged on okay?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Do you mind, we're going to do your affirmation. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the information you're going to provide is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
I affirm.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for coming today. I just ask that you please refrain from using any tenant names while we're in this part of the session due to some privacy concerns.
Now, does that extend to former tenants or current tenants?
I would say as well as the former tenants, like just to
Okay,
avoid
fair enough.
using some names right now, but I will give you an opportunity to speak to both types of tenants later on.
Okay. Just have
Okay.
to remind myself of that. So,
And again, you do not have to disclose exactly where you live either.
I'm perfectly fine with, like, that's all public knowledge and you would all know that. And so I don't have a problem disclosing my name and where I live.
Okay, thank you.
So,
So how long have you, or this is the first question, have you, okay, why not? So you live in the area?
I actually live at 246 Duke Street East, which is across the street from 249.
Okay.
Not directly, but at about a 30-degree angle. So I'm very close to that street. And I've been living here at this house residence since 2000. Okay, so we've been here a lot. Before that, we lived at 279, excuse me. At 279 Duke Street East, which is up the block. And it was our first house. And we raised our family here from when they were born to, their adult age now. So it's overall a great neighborhood to live in, except for a few things. So I hope that gives you some context into some of the things I want to talk about.
Yes, thank you. Can you please tell the committee what you have observed? Maybe we'll set the period. Yeah, why don't you tell the committee just what you've observed over the last few years?
Well, I was thinking about this last night because I know that there was a change in ownership of the house in question. And I have history previous to that, before the ownership change. And this is not a NIMBY issue for myself, and I can't speak for my wife, but we were in agreement on this. We know people need a place to live, and it's not about, oh, all rooming houses are bad, because I knew people like who lived in the place before this previous owner, and we chatted all the time. Some of them were eccentric and a little odd, but I'm a bit eccentric too. But so it's okay. And even around the corner, I've had long time relationships with people that have lived there. So this is not temporary housing. This is long-term housing that these rooming houses are providing. And it's only been since, well, no, I'm going to rephrase that. To my recollection, while there were some problems with the previous ownership of this rooming house at 249, it never seemed as much as it has been over the last few years. Now, the lawyer, when they cross-examine me, will probably try and ask me for specifics, and I won't be able to give them because I don't have a written log of every single call I made to the police about issues that have occurred. So that I was not prepared for any of that.
Okay.
However, I've seen in the last few years a lot of indications of prostitution that, in my observations, and activity consistent with dealing in drugs. I've called the police many times about disturbances of people that looked like they were under the influence of some kind of substance, or were having emotional breakdowns or some kind of mental crisis. And I will also say for the record that I'm a licensed private investigator in the province of Ontario. And I was trained by King and Reed. And this was done before it became popular for security guards to get their double licensing. So I have some training in observation and some training in, well, I'm repeating myself, observing behavior. So this is not just me being a like overreacting neighbor who lives in the neighborhood. And in the records in the city, if you choose to go look, you'll find my statements signed about how the previous owners, we had no problems. Things seemed to be okay. They were managing the property all right. So I don't have copies of those. I can't get copies of those, but we did send them in when we received the written submission evidence stuff that you guys sent us, or used to. Then we didn't get them for years and years.
You're referring to the public notice
Yes, thank you.
that the city sends out, or the manager
Yeah.
of licensing sends out. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you made calls to the police. Now, I
Yes.
don't want you to tell me the details of those calls, but just can you estimate from the time of 2015 or
Yeah.
2016, we'll say 2016 to now, how many calls do you think you've made? As an
I
estimate?
can't, I know
Okay.
I can't even,
Okay.
that's a long time ago. And I wouldn't be able to confidently answer that question.
Okay.
Sorry.
But you've called the police
Several
less than-
times. It would be a thing that, and I've given my name every time. So they would be in the police log. So if you wanted an accurate,
I just want to make
Right.
it. I guess
there have been many calls in there at night.
Right.
I can't comment on 2015, 2016 specifically.
Oh no, I mean from 2015.
From?
2016
Oh,
to
okay.
now. Like, was it more than once?
Oh,
Was it-
yes,
Was
yes,
it just
yes, I'm
once?
sorry.
That's all. I just
There
want
have
an
been
estimate.
many. I'm going to say, no, I can't, more than 3, less than 50.
Okay.
I apologize. I've affirmed that I would tell the truth as best I could. And
Oh, I know, and I asked that you just estimate. So more than 3 and less than 50.
I've called even recently regarding noise because they've suddenly started doing renovations. And it's amazing the inconsiderateness of it, working after 11 o'clock, like
At
grinding
night?
outside on the front steps. Like even contractors know the noise bylaws. It's stunning that this would just do this.
So when did these renovations?
I would say in the last week and a half, I would say. I don't have a,
Okay.
but previous to that, it's been calls about people acting out in really dangerous looking ways, looking like they were under the influence, cars coming by regularly to pick up like female tenants in the building. And it's really funny because the tenant in question that I would see, I knew. And because she lived in a rooming house with a fellow I knew around the corner. And she lived there for a really long time. And there was never, to my observation, any of that kind of behavior. But then that rooming house was bought and everyone had to move out and she moved into this place. And that's when I started seeing this behavior. And so that really concerned me. And she wouldn't talk to us anymore. It was very sad. So
Okay.
I've had personal relationships with people in these houses, not the ones at 249. They always kept to themselves under this new ownership. It was very isolating. And I know almost everybody in my block. I talk a lot, you can probably tell. And so I don't know their last names or all the intimate details of their lives, but we've been living here 25 years, approximately. And so this has always been lately, it's been disconcerting. The amount of calls, the drug calls, the crazy acting out in front of the house at late hours, the ways that the cars would come by all the time. And I would call the police about all those things when I was able to.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question. I apologize.
Yeah, that's good. So what I'm hearing from you is that once ownership changed, things were different.
It got much worse. I recall the humorous time, well, it wasn't humorous, it was like 3 a.m. There were a bunch of, under the previous owners, it was in the summer, and there were a bunch of guys out on the porch singing at 3 a.m. And they were happy drunk, I guess, but they were singing, and I had to call because I worked during the day. And I guess it's memorable because they were singing East Coast songs, and they were singing really badly. And I mentioned that in the police, my report. I said, and they're not even singing really good. And that's the worst part of it. So, but none of those, there were never calls like that. Sometimes I called because I had concerns about someone like being really emotional and hearing it coming out of the house, like more than like something that would make me concerned.
So all of these things that you're talking about, have you ever spoken to the landlord or the owner of the property about these issues?
Never. I don't even know what they look like.
And
I
why-
would see a car, one of those smart cars. I think it was a smart car, maybe once a month, and it would stop for like 5 minutes. And I assumed that might be the bill collector or someone connected to the house, but they never were around. I never saw them. And if I was out walking the dog, and I have a beagle with a bladder problem, so I walk him a lot. I walk by the house every day. I never met them. No one ever came out to say, hi, how are you doing? So I don't even know what they look like.
Okay.
So, like, I know this is a for-profit. This is not city-run housing. This is not supportive housing. This is not like the housing that's around the corner in the apartments. And I know the dog walkers from there. This is for profit. They make money out of this. And it's a business. And if I ran a business like this, you guys would be all over me like crazy. Like if any other kind of business, if I didn't renew my license for driving, or, had my insurance, or, well, I don't, just license, and I was found out that the government would love that. They would be all over me. So that this kind of thing in a for-profit business is going on, and the amount of neglect, like even to the property with the lawns sometimes, it makes me crazy.
Well, maybe you could describe how you view this property has been neglected.
Well,
Your
I've
words.
seen
Mhm.
the sidewalks not shoveled. I've seen the lawn get really, really long, until like more long than is necessary. I know we have some leeway for when we need to cut our lawns. Basically that would be the only, sometimes they used to have bonfires in the back and the smoke would be a problem, but that hasn't happened in a long time. And I couldn't be specific about how long meant. So anyway, but it would be that kind of basic maintenance that is responsible, a homeowner is responsible for.
Okay. How has living next to this property or near this property,
Across the street from the property,
how has living there now affected your family?
Well, I'm going to say that it's probably different from having property that adjoins it. The street is a bit of like, gives me some distance. I would say that sometimes we were very worried about all the traffic when the kids were little. Even when they were young, we were worried about a criminal element being so close. We were always making sure our cars were locked because we had them broken into several times and rifled for money and valuables. So having that kind of stress like made it hard because you have to be on guard. It never felt like we could let our guard down if we like left bikes out or anything. Like, and I've seen, when I've gone on walks, I get the sense in other neighborhoods that doesn't seem to be an issue because I see bikes laying around and, you know, it feels more comfortable. The problem having people that were under some kind of substance abuse was the worst because they were completely erratic and you didn't know the person walking down the street coming from the house if they were going to lash out because they looked really, well, I wanted to, sketchy isn't the right word because it doesn't describe the visceralness of it. And all our doors are locked all the time, even when we're in the house, because we've had issues where people have come up and tried our doors, like to try and get in. And I attribute that to the culture that was being allowed to foster in this house.
So what was it like then before 2015?
Well, we certainly didn't have the car rifling. That was the thing that changed really quickly, like that I can recollect. It was, I knew two guys that lived in there. You know, I talked to them. I even helped one fellow, like, was taken out because he had died of alcohol poisoning. And they were not perfect tenants under the previous ownership, but I knew people that were in the house, and I even helped clean out his room. So I'd been in the house. So this is not me being a complete outsider, not having interactions with the place pre-2015. But it's never happened since. And when my son witnessed the police raid, as he was walking up the road and saw it all go down, that was like a clarion call to really pay attention to what was happening there. It's sad because these people are vulnerable people. Like no one wakes up and says, I'm going to be a prostitute, or I'm going to be a drug user, or I'm going to have to sell drugs to make money for however I need to go. And this to be allowed to happen, the uncaringness that I perceive it's disappointing.
So you mentioned that police raid.
Yes, that was the one that was in the record and on CKCO, where it was part of the there was a big guns and drugs bust in several places in Ontario. And this house was part of that, I believe. And there were, my son said, like a whole SWAT team of people. And they all silently came in and surrounded the house and then served the warrant and broke the door down. I did not see it. I saw it on the news. My son told me about it. So I wasn't personally witness to it.
And you don't have to say what you were doing this morning, but I just want to know, were you watching the evidence this morning presented by other witnesses?
I couldn't. I had to take my father
That's
to get
okay.
his COVID shot. He's
That's okay.
83.
I just wanted to know if you.
No, I wasn't present.
You're just making reference to an article, and I just wanted to
Correct.
clarify that this is, you saw it when it was printed in the record.
And on CKCO.
Okay, and you heard about it from your son.
And my son, yeah.
Thank you.
But I figured something like this would happen sooner or later, because just the kinds of people and the traffic, and it's that's the part that's really scary for having a family. And with there are a lot of old people in the neighborhood too.
Okay.
So other than that, it's a great place. This neighborhood's a great place to live. Any character, funny story, we moved down here because back in 95, everybody said, oh, don't buy down there. It's full of drugs and prostitutes. And we came down and we actually went and talked to some neighbors and saying, we were thinking of buying down here. And they invited us to a Christmas party. And we met a whole bunch of people and they said, this is a great place to live. All this talk about drugs and prostitutes, you know, it's not a problem here, but everybody thinks it is. And so we were very fortunate to buy here. But now it can really live up to that moniker, and it's sad. It doesn't have to be.
Okay. One more question, and then I think I'd like to talk about some tenants using their names, and so we'll move into a closed session at that point. You mentioned this police raid. Were there other times that you noticed police at the property since 2015?
Yes, well, there was the people that died there. There was in the winter several years back, there was when the one of the tenants was stabbed, and the police were there for almost 4 or 5 days just with the tape and collecting evidence. And that was, I've seen them there many times for what I perceive to be some kind of drug issue or some kind of acting out issue. And usually the paramedics come. Let me think. I saw the fire inspector a couple of weeks back. I guess they were doing inspections, but it was odd because there were a few years where we weren't getting the public notice.
Do you mean
papers that we would write out about how things were going with the properties? So
do you mean that you received a public notice prior to 2015?
I can't recall. We used to get them a lot, and then we stopped getting them.
Then they started up again?
And then they started up again. And so I wasn't sure why that occurred. And so that must be related to the licensing thing that I've heard through this tribunal about. And in retrospect, I surprised because I was calling the police about this, even without getting those notices about issues that were going on at 249. And so some branch must have known that it was still a boarding house. It's not important.
Okay. So again, now I would like to ask you some questions involving tenants' names. So I would ask the committee that we be moved into closed session just for that portion.
Okay.
So in closed session, what does that mean?
It just means that it's not live streamed anymore.
Okay. Can I ask a question to the tribunal convener?
I think that's probably me. So yes, feel free.
Can I cross-examine the owner if I'm being cross-examined by her lawyer? How does this work in a situation like?
So you don't get the opportunity to ask questions. You provided testimony through the city,
Okay.
and they will now have an opportunity to question your testimony.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. This is my first tribunal that I've participated in, so.
No problem. Sarah, are you able to confirm that we were live streaming and everything was fine?
Okay, we'll carry on then. Mr. Ellis?
Just
Okay.
a moment. My apologies. I'm just confirming that the live stream is up. And it does appear to be live.
Okay, Mr. Ellis, continue.
Yes. So in your testimony, you talked about the fact that you're gone during the day to work.
I do not believe I said that.
Okay, I misunderstood. So are you around the house all the time during the day?
Not all the time. I've been going to school at Conestoga for engineering, and it's been in-house for the last year or so. I would be home a fair amount over the last 4 years because I would be going to class and then coming home. So I'm not someone that would be around the house all day. So
yeah,
but I don't recall saying that what you asked me.
Okay, I apologize. You had stated that that this place is a for-profit, that there's money being made at this property.
If it's a supposition because no, I don't know that. Thank you. I don't know if it's a for-profit or not for profit. I made an assumption that it was a for-profit because most businesses are for-profit.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I would think so. No one would go into a business if they didn't have an expectation of making money at it.
Yes, but it doesn't mean that they are.
It does. I don't know. That is correct.
So you stated that you're estimating between 3 and 50 calls to the police over the last 6 years.
Did I say 50? I
said between 3 and 50. You
3 and 50.
know what the number was. It's been a
yeah, I did believe I said that. Yeah.
Would it be safe to say that you have made a fair number of calls?
Yes, more than would be normal, I guess, in a statistical mean.
Would it be safe to say that nothing is being done by the police to clean up the neighborhood?
I would disagree with that.
Okay.
I see the police regularly. When I call them about the house, they come. I see them parked when I've been out walking the dog, and I walk the dog in the morning and in the evenings and sometimes the afternoons. I've seen them ride through, not every day, but I understand how the way policing is, and you can't have police on every corner doing everything all the time. But we have good response when we call.
But has the criminal activity and the prostitution stopped in the last 6 years?
No.
So would it not be safe to say that they're not really changing anything in the community?
I can't speak to the police. You'd have to ask them. I don't know how to answer that. My opinion is irrelevant. I don't know. You're asking me if I think the police are doing a good job. I think they are. I think it's a big problem. I think the house has been a magnet for this kind of thing.
And it's the only house in the neighborhood that has this problem?
That I know of. I don't have direct access to looking at other houses, so I can't comment on that.
Do you know if there's a police presence at any of the houses on Cameron Street?
I've seen them a couple times come, and when I've never called about those houses. I've seen some police sometimes.
You had made a comment of the fact that the owner of 249 has neglected the maintenance of the property.
In this aspect of lawn cutting and snow shoveling, that's all I was able to comment on. I can't make a comment about structural defects or issues inside the house. So neglect is when I talked about that, I was talking about snow shoveling and sidewalks and driveway.
Is there any other houses on the street that have that same problem?
Let me think. There's one at the corner of Duke and, is that Madison? Yeah, I think it's Madison. That I think is like, that has people living in it. I don't know if the city know, like I've called them about that, or I've talked to bylaw about that, I believe. And that might be an illegal boarding house. But I don't know. That house has an issue with their lawns. Also, corner across from that, I saw bylaw out there just the other day or last week, watching people like a lawn company cutting the lawn there. So I assumed that was under a city order.
So you've called bylaw about maintenance issues several times in the neighborhood then?
No.
Have you for 249 Duke Street?
No.
Okay.
I don't, that's not worth the police's time, in my opinion. It does speak to the person who owns the house, like doing the responsible things though. To me, I don't know the person, so.
Could you attest to whether or not vehicle traffic has lessened in the last 3 weeks?
Let me think. Yes, I would say that it has decreased in the last 3 weeks.
You had mentioned stabbing that had happened. Was that pre-2016 at 249 Duke?
No, that was, I'm sorry, I don't know. I can't remember. I believe it was after 2016, but I can't be sure.
Okay.
But there has been, I'm not, I don't know. Sorry, I sometimes think out loud, so I'm just stopping myself from saying something that might be not my true thoughts.
Would it be safe to say that it was actually in 2015 with the previous owner that the murder happened?
Again, this has been, I object to this point. The witness has answered that he doesn't quite have a memory. He doesn't know. So can we please move on, please?
Can I ask, you are the lawyer for the city of Kitchener, correct? Are you
Yes.
also the judge of this hearing to decide on your objections?
I'm not judging.
For the record.
I'm not judging. It is the committee who should make decisions on it, but I am not telling the committee what to do either. I am a lawyer for the city of Kitchener. I am representing the city in bringing their evidence forward. And if the committee would like to take a moment to consider my objections, then that's fine. That they're supposed to, I assume, but I, again, can't say or speak for the committee.
But I feel that I'm doing an appropriate cross-examination.
So through the chair, it would be.
Yes. If I could ask that Councillor Gazzola and myself take a moment to speak with Jennifer Trumlin.
That would be no problem. I can arrange that. But we are going to recess for a few minutes and allow that to happen. We will be putting everybody on hold.
Through the chair, the live stream seems to be up and running.
Okay, thank you. So is Mr. Ellis here?
Yes, I am.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Ellis, and thanks for your patience with this. I just had to consult with our legal person about technicality things. So basically, but from what I understand is that you've asked the witness the question of when the stabbing took place. The witness answered that question. So if you have more questions to ask, ask a different question, but you can't keep asking the same question over and over again because he answered the question for you.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have any more questions then.
Okay. So at this time, we are going to break then.
I just need you to confirm through the chair what time you were hoping to resume following lunch.
I think, what if, is a 40-minute lunch long enough for everyone?
It's not really long enough to go get any food.
Okay, sorry, I'm 45 minutes or an hour? What would you prefer?
I'm used to an hour when I'm doing a case, but
Okay, we can do an hour. That's fine. That's fine. How about 2 o'clock? Is that good?
yep.
Okay, Erin?
Yes, I agree with the hour. Thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll see everyone back here in an hour then. Thanks.
Through the chair, Robert, you've raised your hand. Is there something I can do for you before we?
You're on mute, Mr.
Am I relieved from this?
Yes, Mr. Gissing.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for coming this today.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Gazzola will stay on.
Through you, the chair, was it still your intention to meet with legal services before resuming for?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Okay, so Jennifer, maybe at 1:45?
I think right now.
Oh, now we're meeting now.
Now. Okay, sorry, I didn't know we were doing it first or this before. Okay, wonderful. So I just wanted to confirm. We will put everybody on hold and you
So it's 2 o'clock. Are we, I can't tell if everyone's back because everybody's on mute. Should we give it a few more minutes or is everyone back? Diana?
I actually don't know yet. Mr. Ellis, Aaron, are you available?
Okay, then we'll wait a bit.
I apologize. I'm back now.
Okay, that's great. And Ms. Mock is back as well. Looks like everybody's back. So we will proceed with the second part of the day here. Mr. Ellis, I think you're starting with your witnesses now. Is that correct? Because Ms. Mock is finished with hers.
Ms. Mock is no longer calling the bylaw officers and the.
Oh.
Let me, I apologize. Let me
Sorry.
speak to that. So Mr. Ellis, you have provided your witness statements and the city's response and to those witnesses that you will be calling. I do plan on calling the manager of bylaw. His name is Steve Renzos, and I do plan on calling the chief fire prevention officer. His name is Tom Ruggel. But that is after your evidence is put in, and that's because that was the material I provided as the rebuttal. If you recall from the June 21st meeting that we had, you said that you needed the adjournments to provide material, and I had asked the committee at that time if it was okay if I could provide rebuttal evidence or file rebuttal evidence, and those are the two witnesses that I would like to call in response to your evidence.
So you're not going to call your own witnesses first? You gave will say statements for them.
Yes, Mr. Ellis, but you are entering character evidence, and you are going to have all these people testify, and so that's why I'm saying it's in response to that.
You're entering the bylaw officer and the fire chief as anti-character references? Or what is the purpose of those two witnesses then?
Okay, Mr. Ellis, let me pull out my books here. Okay, so we're going to do this here. So character evidence is generally not admissible in civil trials to prove a fact and issue. For example, and I'm reading from a textbook. For example, driver's past accidents cannot be offered as proof of a current negligence. So in the criminal context, however, evidence of the accused character, either good or bad, is admissible, but the Crown may not call evidence of the accused bad's character unless the accused first puts his character or your character of your client, Mr. Ellis, into issue. The following three sections apply in criminal trials. So I'm just
a criminal trial?
This is not a criminal trial, but what I'm trying to say to you is, to the best of my knowledge, I'm trying to follow the procedure as laid out about character evidence and character witnesses. And I anticipate that you're calling these character evidence and that they're going to say things. See, I don't even want to say what they're going to say because I don't want to put facts into evidence yet or anything. I just want to be clear to the committee that we're not putting facts into evidence here. But if Mr. Ellis wants me to call the other two city witnesses now, I suppose I could do that. But it was in anticipation to the character evidence that you're providing. And I thought that we were all under the understanding that that's what I was allowed to do because I asked the committee, and according to the rules, if I could provide rebuttal evidence. And that's what I did. And you are aware of that, Mr. Ellis, that I was providing those two will say statements, and I did so on July 9th. That was the deadline that I was given.
Yes.
So
I've actually written submissions on relevance and abusive process for those two witnesses. So I was waiting for those witnesses to be called. But if you would like to wait until afterwards for me to give those submissions to the panel, for them to see the abusive process that I am claiming, seeing as they've attended every one of my clients' properties last Tuesday while we were in the middle of this hearing to do surprise inspections of each of the properties, is that the character testimony that you are rebutting?
Mr. Ellis, I'm saying that you're bringing into issue all of Miss Tamber's, Miss Hamilton's other properties. That is what you're bringing into issue. I have provided you with the will say statements of 2 other, I guess you could say, enforcement agencies. They will be providing information about all those other properties because you're bringing it into issue now that you're bringing character evidence about all of her other properties. You have some witnesses that do not reside at 249 Duke Street. You have provided a witness statement of over 22 or 27. Here it is, 27. I didn't recognize most of those names and that they stated in their will say statements that they don't live there, to my knowledge, that they don't live there or have ever lived there. And so that's why I'm bringing that other evidence.
But they're not giving evidence to the properties. They're giving evidence to the property owner. You're trying to bring evidence against my client based on the properties, not the property owner.
You're saying that, what you're saying is that you're saying, oh, Mr. Ellis, it's really hard when your witnesses haven't started yet to sort of have this conversation. But I anticipate that your witnesses will say, oh, Miss Tamber is a wonderful landlord. I have no issues, and I reside at some other property that is not 249 Duke Street East. So every other person does not live there. What are the issues then at these other properties? There are issues too. That's what I'm saying.
Are there issues? Because you haven't produced any evidence that.
Yes, I have. That's all the evidence.
Actions you did the other day.
All the evidence. This tribunal is first and foremost about 249 Duke Street East. You provided witness statements with many different residents all across the city at other properties owned by Ann Tamber. And further, you also bring it into contention that she's losing her livelihood. She won't have any money to do, I don't know what she's going to say, but you keep saying that she's going to lose her livelihood. You put a motion before this committee on June 21st. You talked about her livelihood. Then now, is it into issue now because does she get rent from all these other properties? Is that her livelihood too? So, Mr. Ellis, if you want to have all these character witnesses and character evidence before the committee, which I don't think is really, unless they live at the property, I don't think it's relevant. But if you bring this into issue, then yes, I provided you with 2 witnesses that I intend to call because you've made all the other properties also into issue about how you're going to say she's such a wonderful landlord, but there are issues at other properties too.
Not fire and bylaw.
Not fire and bylaw.
Well, there is evidence. There is lots of evidence. I provided all of that to you by July 9th. It's been on that share file. We filed it within the time frame that the committee allowed for. The committee did give me permission to file rebuttal evidence. I provided that evidence. Okay. Did I know at the time that you were going to provide evidence of multiple houses all over the city? No. That residents reside all over the place? No. I just wanted the opportunity to provide something in case you did, and you did. So that's how I see it, Mr. Ellis. I did not provide or file things to the committee about bylaw evidence or fire prevention evidence for all your clients' other properties until you brought it into issue when you provided all these witness statements from all these other properties.
And those witness statements say stuff about the fire and bylaw at those other properties.
Mr. Ellis, you bring it into issue. You're saying that she's wonderful. I'm going to ask them. I'm going to ask your tenants. Are there issues?
Mr. Ellis, how many witnesses are you calling for this?
I'm actually going to call Ann Tamber. I'm going to call Brian Edmonds, and I'm going to call Eric Schmidt. And that's probably the only tenants those are the only people I'm going to call.
And are they
all in relation to 249 Duke Street? So
they're not providing character, are these character evidence? They're providing character evidence, or is it just about Duke Street?
It's just about Duke Street.
Just about the building.
Mr. Ellis, that was not clear. This is your witness statement. It's very long. You've got 27
I had less than 15 days to come up with the witnesses. I didn't know which witnesses I was going to call and what I was going to use. I had to have everything in by the 6th of July. You've had how many months to prepare for this hearing?
Oh, I did not, Mr. Ellis. I was actually...
we did extend this, Mr. Ellis, to be fair. We did extend it to give you more time. to get witnesses, because the first one that we were at, you didn't have any witnesses. So I'm going to ask for a brief pause here to consult with Councillor Gazzola and Jennifer. So if we could just go in private for a minute.
I would also like to go on I want to be on the record that I find that Jennifer Trumland Jones is an assistant solicitor of the plaintiff that is bringing this case against my client. So I find it to be a huge conflict. I researched who she was over my lunch break, and she's an assistant solicitor for the same city that is coming after my client. So I find that to be a huge conflict.
Mr. Ellis, if just to address that point, and then I think we go into our in-camera session, but I just want to clarify, I did mention this morning that I was an employee of the city, and just confirming again that my statement that I have not been involved in the prosecution, have not had any communications with the solicitor for the city with respect to this prosecution, and have no knowledge outside of the scope of this hearing regarding the prosecution or any of the matters relating to this this license or this hearing.
Are you not an employee of the city of Kitchener?
Yes, that is correct.
Well then, during the break, I will call the Law Society to get a ruling as to whether or not it's a conflict.
That's your prerogative. I'd suggest you can. Yes, that is correct.
Well then, during the break, I will call the Law Society to get a ruling as to whether or not it's a conflict. Society to get a ruling as to whether or not it's a conflict.
Okay, Councillor Michaud, I believe that we are live and you should be good to go.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Ellis and Ms. Mock, are you on? Yes. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Ellis, you have indicated that your witnesses are testifying about the property and licensing issues, and that's what it is. Ms. Mock, if your witnesses are testifying solely on the property and licensing issue, you should bring them forward now.
Yes.
I don't understand what the committee is asking. The property is standards. I've already provided all the evidence based on this property. If you're asking if there's going to be evidence on other properties, then I could do that now if that's what the committee wishes. But if the committee wishes not to hear that other evidence, then I won't be providing it.
Well, this hearing is about this property. It's not about other properties. So I wonder. I think if Mr. Ellis's witnesses are talking about this licensing issue and the property, then he should bring his witnesses forward. And if your witnesses are talking about this property and the licensing, then you should bring them forward. Not wait. I don't understand why you're waiting.
I was waiting because I was saying is Mr. Ellis was bringing that into issue. He was bringing it into issue, and therefore I could rely on other witness statements, other witnesses that I had to rebut the evidence that he was bringing into contention. And that's why I was saying I was waiting to see what he was going to do. But today, so I anticipated based on the evidence that he filed, he had 27 witnesses and they didn't reside at this particular property. When I first looked at it, I said to myself, this is irrelevant. I don't need to know about all her other properties. I don't need to know about what they say. That's not, I was going to say it's not relevant for all these witnesses to come. He then provided many of those people's email addresses because we needed to know like who he was actually bringing forward. And there was at least 10 of those 27 that were going to present evidence.
And he's indicated today he's bringing 3, I think you said, Mr. Ellis?
Just now, though. This is just now. And that's why I paused my evidence.
And so what I'm saying is that if you want to bring your witnesses forward now, with regards to the licensing and the property, you should do so now.
Again, understanding that Mr. Ellis is not bringing into contention all the other properties that Ms. Tamber owns, then I said that the city's evidence is complete. And that's why I said I had no further witnesses at this time.
Okay, then Mr. Ellis, you can proceed.
Okay, Thank you. I would like to start the first witness being Eric Schmidt.
Mr. Ellis, just item of procedure. If you wish to do a small opening statement before calling your first witness, you would be permitted to do so at this time if you wish.
If I would like to do what? I apologize, I couldn't hear you.
An opening statement before calling your first witness. It's up to you. I don't know if you have something prepared. Otherwise, I will move Eric over and you can go ahead and begin your questioning.
No, I will do a opening statement.
My apologies, Mr. Ellis. I missed that one. So go ahead.
Okay. So this case is about whether or not my client has broken the rules under the lodging license, in which she would have her lodging license revoked based on the behavior and the standards that are being kept at this property. I believe that you will hear testimony from the longest standing tenant at this property, who was there before Ms. Tamber took over this property. You will hear from a case manager who deals with a lot of the people at this property. And then you will hear from Ms. Tamber herself about what she has done in relation to trying to keep this property in compliance and trying to keep the community safe. That's what I believe that you will hear today. Those are my opening statements.
Thank you. You may call your first witness now.
Okay, I call Eric Schmidt.
Hi, Eric. Are you able to turn on your camera and raise your right hand for me?
Hello.
Hi. Do you mind? You're going to swear under oath. Do you swear or affirm the information you're going to provide today is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is. I swear.
Thank you so much.
Or I so swear.
Okay.
Hello, Eric. Thank you very much for attending today. Can you tell
Not
us?
a problem.
Can you tell us what you do, what your employment is?
Sure. I work for Threshold Homes and Supports, which is a housing and mental health service provider, mental health and addiction service provider in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. I work for the FACT team. That stands for Flexible Assertive Community Treatment. And my professional designation is a social worker.
Okay, and how long have you been doing that?
So I've been employed with Threshold Homes and Supports since before they were Threshold Homes and Supports. They were formerly called Waterloo Regional Homes for Mental Health, and I began my career there in December of 2004. So quite some time.
Okay, and in your position, have you had any dealings with tenants from 249 Duke Street East?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell us how you've been involved in that property?
Okay, I'll do the best that I can. So I've had dealings with 5 specific individuals.
Hold on 1 second, sorry. 1 second, Eric. Should we be worried about Eric releasing people's information on the live stream? Should we be going off?
I won't be providing any names of any individuals.
Perfect.
Okay. I can provide some descriptions, but under the personal health and privacy, I won't be providing names of we call them consumers, you call them clients.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay with everyone else?
Yeah, I think you can carry on.
Okay, so I've been in a case management capacity or support coordination capacity for more than 10 years. I've worked with 5 specific individuals that have resided at 249 Duke Street East. My role is essentially to work with individuals that struggle with addictions, mental health issues, and persistent homelessness or precariously housed individuals. So to give some context into what that means, hard to house individuals are people that often cannot afford to pay for conventional self-contained apartments like bachelor apartments and 1-bedroom apartments. Hard to house individuals are typically people that don't have a good credit history, don't have a good housing history, have previous instances of eviction. A lot of these folks are involved in the criminal justice system on, you know, numerous occasions or more than one occasion. And a lot of these individuals often experience, find it very difficult not just to manage staying in a room for rent situation, but they're often banned or temporarily banned from even homeless shelters. So some of the individuals that I work with represent, they live on the fringes. They're sort of the extremes, and they find maintaining housing to be a significant challenge. And part of my job is to help them find, obtain, and then maintain that housing.
So do you assist with finding housing for these individuals, these consumers?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So, I mean, so our service, our service has changed a lot over the years. We went from an outreach model to a support coordination to a case management model. But what support typically looks like is we might get a referral from Grand River Hospital's adult inpatient mental health unit. And the referral might say this person needs income support and housing. So we'll connect them with Ontario Works and Ontario Disability. Before COVID, I would contact a whole host of landlords, and Tamber being one of them. And we would begin a market rent, room for rent housing search. Any callback that we would get, we would follow up with usually a face-to-face appointment. I often attend those appointments with landlord, property management, as well as consumer. That appointment usually involves a viewing of the room for rent as well as an interaction between the landlord and the consumer. Once an agreement is, the landlord and property manager often have an application process, and there's a screening. That screening process often prevents many of my consumers, many of the vulnerable people in Kitchener-Waterloo that I'm speaking about, from obtaining housing. And then the next step in the process is an agreement is struck between the consumer and the landlord, and Tamber in this case. A move-in date is set. We arrange payments, often through Ontario Works, Ontario Disability. We secure last month's rent payment from Lutherwood Housing, and the person moves forward with their tenancy. Once the tenant has moved into the location, depending on the acuity of need, so acuity of need could refer to mental health need, could refer to addictions need, could refer to physical health issues. We determine how much support that person needs, and whether or not they need, you know, one support worker or a team-based approach. And then we try the very best that we can with the limited resources we have to support that person in being successful with their recovery goals, with a priority focus on maintaining their housing. That was a mouthful. Did that come through okay?
I thought so.
Okay.
So have you put in multiple multiple people with Ms. Tamber?
Absolutely.
Could you tell how many?
5 in this property alone that I can recall.
Okay. And you continue to work with them after they are put into the property?
So, yes, I shouldn't say it's either me or one of my colleagues on the FACT team, or, you know, a housing support coordinator from Thresholds. Once a person obtains housing and market rent, like a market rent room for rent, them obtaining housing does not mean we discharge them from services. That's merely one recovery focused goal that they've met. And then most often, in most cases, in fact, in all the cases of these 5 individuals, I did continue working with them. Now, I was gone for 1 year because I took an education leave to return to Wilfrid Laurier and get my master's degree. But during that time that I was gone, they did hire a staff to replace me to continue providing those housing support services.
Okay. And is there a lot of landlords during COVID that are still willing to do this?
No.
So would you say that what percentage are you limited to now of landlords willing to take on these consumers?
Very limited. I can't give you a percentage, but I can tell you it's very hard. So I'm not going to call myself a housing expert. That being said, I've worked in housing and mental health for 18 years. In my personal life outside of the region of Waterloo, I am a landlord. I have housing stock that is, I have contracts with the Canadian Mental Health Association and the support of Housing of Perth program. That's through the city of Stratford. I understand at a very kind of fundamental level the importance of accessing housing. And we in this community, I love the region of Waterloo, I really do, and the city of Kitchener, they're fantastic. That said, we do not have adequate stock of safe, affordable housing in the city of Kitchener, and that continues to be an issue, and that issue is only, unfortunately, it's only getting worse because our housing continues to go up in value, and so the people on the margins are finding it more and more difficult to find, secure, and maintain their housing. I was helping a woman with a disability 2 weeks ago, and she insisted that she wanted a one-bedroom apartment. We found a one-bedroom apartment ad online for $1,400 a month, and when we clicked on it, there were 29,000 views. So you have to understand, the folks that we work with that are hard to house, landlords are allowed to discriminate or discern based on housing history and financial capacity to pay rent. So when there's that many applicants to self-contained units, the people that we work with who often have poor housing history and often don't meet the threshold for financial capacity to pay rent based on the criteria set out by most market rent landlords, their options, their housing options become greatly diminished.
Okay. I think that you've answered all my questions.
Okay. Thank you. Great.
Ms. Mock?
I want to ask you questions.
Ms. Mock?
Yes, just a few questions. So you mentioned that you're a landlord.
Yeah.
And how did you decide on your tenants?
Pardon me?
How do you decide which tenants you choose?
I have I mean, that's in my personal life.
Right. Yep.
So I don't
you mentioned
necessarily
it, though.
see the,
You mentioned
yeah.
it. And
yeah. So, I mean, I mentioned it because I wanted to share that I do have some understanding of kind of both sides. I see it from a landlord's perspective. I also, see it from a housing worker's perspective. So I have multiple processes to determine how I do tenant selection.
okay. And are you aware of how Ann Tamber does tenant selection?
Anne has multiple properties, multiple configurations of multiple properties. I only have the only units that I have worked with Anne on are usually the room for rents. So the process that is typically involved is I contact Anne. She usually gets back to me. We have a conversation, usually involving the consumer, like the consumer is present for that conversation. Sometimes they're sitting beside me in the car. Sometimes it's an in-person conversation. Anne asks a series of questions. The consumer answers those questions, and based on those answers, like questions and answers, Anne makes a determination around whether or not whether or not the consumer I'm bringing forward is a suitable tenant for one of her properties. It's ask and answer.
So did you say that when you're in the car, are you at the property, outside the property, or are you elsewhere, somewhere else?
So there's been well, both have occurred. So there's been instances where I'm calling Anne from the hospital, and the consumer is sitting with me at the hospital. There's been times when I'll bring the consumer to the property, But usually before the tenant moves in, Anna will either have some kind of direct communication with them, whether that's a phone conversation or a face-to-face meeting.
Okay. I think that concludes all of my questions. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you.
Is it okay? No problem. Is it okay if I go now, or do you guys want me to stick around?
No, you're done.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now I'd like to call Brian Edmonds.
Brian, are you able to unmute yourself?
I'm not sure he heard you, Diana.
Brian, are you there?
I'm assuming so.
We can message him and see if we can get him to come on the line. Maybe he's not understanding how to unmute it.
I have pressed the unmute button several times. But
Perfect.
Oh,
There he
there
is.
Brian, how are you? Are you there now?
Hello,
Hi, how are you doing?
fine, thanks. Yourself?
Good, thanks. Do you mind raising your right hand?
Pardon me, yes?
You're going to swear or affirm that the information you're going to provide today is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes?
Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you, Brian. You, where do you reside?
I rent the third floor and part of the second on 249 Duke Street East.
And how long have you resided there?
19 years plus.
And do you remember giving a witness statement?
Yes, I do.
Do you need to refer to that witness statement at all for your testimony, or can you just do it by memory?
No, I can do it by memory.
So can you tell us what life has been like living at 249 Duke Street?
For all the years I've been here, I've adapted to it. I mean, I had better places before that the city's shut down and taken away. But for the area that I have here and for the neighborhood, it's excellent.
And how about the other tenants that you live with?
Oh, the other tenants are just fine right now. Every now and then, you get a bad egg.
Okay. And Counselor, I'm wondering if maybe we should take this offline so that I can talk about direct tenants in the property. And maybe that has to be offline.
Probably, yeah, we should do that.
If names are going to be listed, yes, that would be preferred.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the committee administrator to let me know if we're back in open session.
You're live streaming.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Emmons. I just have a few questions. First, you mentioned that police have just been there mostly within the last 18 months. Did the police ever enter the property while you were there?
What, in the last 19 years?
Well, I just meant you said 18 months the police were around, so I was just asking if they entered the property while you were present.
enter the property. But as I said, I live on the 3rd floor, and the rest of the house doesn't really affect me up here, like the noise or any problem.
Okay. And you mentioned that there are house rules posted. What is the rule about guests?
No guests after 11 o'clock at night, I think it is.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Ellis, do you have another witness?
Yeah, I have one last witness, Ann Tamber. What time are we going to end today?
Well, we could go till 5 if we think we could get this finished today.
Well, we'll see. I don't know how many cross-examined questions there are for Ms. Tamber, but we will see.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
Mrs. Director, just want to confirm we are done with Brian.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, come up to the table. I'm calling Ann Tamber.
Mind raising your right hand? Do you mind swearing or affirming that the information you're going to provide today is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you so much.
Ann, can you tell us, do you own the property at 249 Duke Street East?
I own the property at 249 Duke Street East
And how long have you owned that property?
since just before Christmas 2015.
And is that property a rooming house, a lodging house?
It is.
And do you have a lodging license?
I'm not sure.
Did you have a lodging license?
It was licensed when I bought the place, but as soon as I bought the place, we went down to 3 tenants plus myself living in that property.
And
So our rooming house license was not required.
when did the license be required?
Would have been when my tenancy went up over the 4 or 5.
And what year would that have been?
2017, maybe 2018. I'm not 100% sure of the date. We did a lot of extensive renovations inside. So there were a lot of empty rooms.
And how many tenants do you have today?
Currently there's 6 at 249 Duke Street East.
Okay. And do you remember writing a will say statement?
I do.
Would the board or would the counselors prefer to just read this statement themselves later on? Or would they like my client to read this statement into evidence now?
I think it's only 3 o'clock. I think she could read it into evidence now. Councillor Gazzola, or how are you with that? Yes? Yes, she could read it. Thanks.
Yes.
All right. My name is Ann Tamber. I currently reside at 42 Honer Ave. I am the owner of 249 Duke Street East and have owned it since December 2015.
Sorry, 1 second. My camera just shut off for a quick second. Hold on, if you could just give me 1 second. I seem
Sure.
to hit a part of my camera that shouldn't have. I went to go move the microphone so that you could hear her better. There we go. I apologize.
All right.
When I bought it, there were 4 tenants residing legally. In other words, they were there before I moved in, and a revolving door of guests who would crash on the basement floor or bunk in with the other residents. I moved into vacant room 2 and began to transform the property by renovations and systematically evicting tenants who weren't following my posted rules that included no overnight guests without permission. even though the landlord-tenant board cannot enforce it. In the end, only one original tenant remained, though it took till late 2017 to get rid of the last undesirable. Michael Walsh. I'll stop saying names. He came back a few months in 2020, not as a tenant, but as the boyfriend of one. I transformed 249 Duke Street East, painting the whole interior, adding ceiling fans to each bedroom, replacing some flooring, upgraded the hot water heating system, and I posted my rules. I housed individuals on social assistance who needed stability, and they were referred to me by various support workers that I worked with to help our mutual charges onto what we hoped would be a better life. Mostly I worked with workers from the House of Friendship and attended meetings sponsored by Kitchener Housing with other landlords who were focused on helping our most challenged. I also joined a networking group to help facilitate my exposure to other resources better to help my tenants and my fellow workers' clients. In 2017, I met a worker, Willie, from One Roof, an organization that helps young people, and he was looking for housing to help his clients.
Hold on one second. Should we go off the record because of some names?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one second.
Sorry. I didn't realize there were so many names in here.
Sorry.
Diana, we'll go camera.
Hi, you can proceed. We are live streaming again.
Okay. After you applied for the lodging license, did the city put any conditions on your license?
They did not.
And were there inspections that needed to be done by the city representatives?
Yes.
And which ones were done?
There was a fire inspection and there was a property standards inspection. The property standards inspection came first. He gave me a list of things to do. Then the fire inspection came and he gave me a list of things to do. One of the things that I had to do before the fire inspection passed was to include some fire rated caulking, which is a bright orange color, to some of the work. He found that one of the doors was not properly fire rated. So they needed to see that that caulking was fire rated. So I could not paint until the fire department or the fire gentleman passed that. Because if I did, I would have covered the caulking and then they would not be able to tell that was fire rated caulking. So that took a bit of time. And also COVID happened. So I didn't have people coming in because of the COVID situation until after April, May of 2020.
Did you end up passing the inspections?
I believe I did.
And do you know when when you passed those inspections?
A license was issued, I believe it was in May of 2020.
Okay.
I have the certificate in my email, I can check.
Okay. You said that you had house rules posted.
Yes, since I bought the house.
Could we bring up the picture that will be called? I apologize. I will bring that right now. Trying to think of what I called it. If you could just give me one indulgence. It's going to be called House Rules and Needle Boxes.
I apologize. This was something you had submitted?
Yes, it is. It should be from the first, might not be from the first set of documents that I submitted before June 21st. It might be part of that.
similar to the June 21st statement from Anne, it wasn't received by me specifically. I only have the 24 documents that were received on July 6th. Aaron, do you possibly have any further documents that were provided before June 21?
No, I do not have any documents provided before the first hearing date of June 21st, 2021.
I sent you
From Mr. Ellis. I don't have anything provided from Mr. Ellis or any other person.
They were emailed to you and Diana before the June 21st. I don't remember what the deadline was that I had to send the documents in. I think it was the 18th. It was a bunch of pictures, a bunch of witness statements.
No, I didn't have that. And Mr. Ellis, remember I had emailed you after you sent the second, I mean, I'm assuming this is now your second witness statement or witness list, but I had emailed you and asked for Ms. Tamber's witness statement because there was nothing provided to me, or my understanding was to the committee administrator prior to June 21st. And I thought that was the whole reason you asked for the adjournment, was that you needed to get witnesses and provide information. And I'm sorry, I don't have anything before then.
Well, that's unfortunate because there was quite a few documents in that email and I wasn't aware that it didn't go through because I have confirmation that it was delivered in the email. So I never bothered to follow up.
Mr. Ellis, again, everything is whatever the committee and the committee administrator, we could put this question to her, but my understanding is that whatever is filed and provided to her, she would put through that share file system. Now, I didn't see anything filed prior to the June 21st, 2021 date of the hearing. I only received witness statements, the witness list on July 6th, and that was around, I think it was 5:10 p.m. that I received that.
Well, I'm gonna leave this to the counselors to decide because there's quite a few documents that were in that original email that was sent on June 17th that I plan on relying upon in this testimony.
Can you, if you have, if you sent it by email, you should have it in your sent folder.
Yes.
You could present that maybe, that you did send it that date.
Okay, give me one quick second.
I also just have to make a submission to the committee if that's okay. I would like, usually in the course of showing evidence, if you want to call something up as an exhibit, you provide that to the other side first. Now, I've just stated, I haven't seen anything that Mr. Ellis is going to show and enter as exhibits because he hasn't, like I said, we haven't received it. And again, maybe the committee administrator could also confirm that.
Why is my hand up?
I again don't have any documents that were submitted to me beyond what the evidence, the 24 files received on July 6th. It was discovered, and I had spoken with Mr. Ellis that a firewall was blocking the documents because they were sent through a zip file. So I did end up receiving the 24 documents, but I didn't get anything prior to that.
How can I send this to the committee so that they can see proof that this email was sent on June 17th at 4:25 p.m.?
But that's fine. It was sent, but just because it was sent, doesn't mean
I never got any. I never got any denial that it didn't go through.
Okay, so
it did not bounce back.
Again, Mr. Ellis, I didn't know that you were going to provide anything because you said to the committee administrator, this is what I was aware, that you were going to bring a motion to adjourn. So I didn't think to ask you if you were going to file anything because your argument, your motion was that you were going to ask for an adjournment on June 21st. I didn't actually think to ask you if there was anything else that you needed to provide.
You denied my request for the adjournment, so I had to provide whatever documents I had in my possession at that time, which one of them was Eric Smith's statement, which I thought that we had actually discussed.
I didn't deny it. I just didn't consent to it, Mr. Ellis, but that's neither here nor there at the point. Yeah. I think that, may I make another suggestion to the committee, that it is 3:35 today, and if we don't have these documents, maybe Mr. Ellis should be able to be allowed to have some time so that it does get filed.
I was just going to suggest that what evidence was submitted, and if you could file it again to Diana, and then we're going to take a break
Okay.
for a few minutes until it comes to Diana, and then we'll decide. So we're just, Councillor Gazzola and I are going to go in camera, and you, Mr. Ellis, if you could send that email right away to Diana. Thanks.
I will. Now that I know that if there appears to be a problem, I will break it out to just the documents instead of the zip file, because apparently the city of Kitchener's firewall is blocking my zip files.
That's likely.
Okay. I will send it right now.
I can't see this and work on my computer here. Shoot. What did I do?
Would I have a couple minutes to go to the washroom? I didn't know when you were coming back, so I haven't left my office.
Sure. That's
Thank you.
fine. Can't open this.
I apologize. I'm back now.
Sorry, Diana, do you want to make, we received the files and Diana's gonna make a comment.
So I just wanted to let you know the documents have been received. Of the documents received, there is a business license renewal notice that it was indicating the renewal notice for this current year. The noise bylaw, which was posted on the city's website. The denial of the adjournment on behalf of city council, I'm sorry, not city council, on behalf of legal counsel from the city. So that was Aaron's letter that was forwarded to the committee prior to the June 21st hearing. Email correspondence between Anne and Timothy and the manager of licensing, noting his retention as counsel. There's a human right code, a residential tenancy act, the statement from Eric Schmidt, as well as Brian's statement, the previous tenant who has already done his statement this afternoon. There is also a the notice from Helen to Anne on February 23rd related to the license. The house rules and needle boxes, which was explained before the break, and the one other email correspondence between city council and the city's council regarding the adjournment and how to file documents after the June 21st adjournment date. So there are several documents that are available for public viewing. Are there any documents specifically, Mr. Ellis, you were hoping to use?
I will be using a few of them.
My apologies. I just want to confirm Aaron is also in attendance. Just as I have read those documents, I wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you. I didn't want to have you stepped out of the room and then I didn't quite see you. Perfect. My apologies, Mr. Ellis. Continue.
Can I ask what time we're going till tonight? Because it's 4:15. I have over 80 questions of my client. And I'm sure that Aaron will have several cross-examination questions for my client.
Well, I think we'd like to get this done today.
I will not be able to stay past 5 o'clock. I'm on my way to Windsor tonight.
In addition, Councillor Michaud, I apologize if I say your name wrong. I hope I said it right.
You did.
Maybe I just call you Madam Chair. Madam Chair, there's, in addition to cross-examination questions, there's also an opportunity at the end procedurally for submissions. So I don't think we'll get to those oral submissions, but I am just going to ask this, and again, Mr. Ellis can put his opinion in as well, but if the committee is looking to end today, perhaps under Rule 7.10 of this licensing committee, it says that the licensing committee may order the parties to submit written argument on any issue and shall direct the order and timing of the submissions of written arguments. So I believe that this would apply to submissions at the end. So perhaps instead of oral submissions, we could do written submissions, and you could provide a timeline for that for both Mr. Ellis and myself to provide that by. So then this way we could just try to finish with Ms. Tamber today in the 45 minutes.
I won't be done in 45 minutes, but I will try.
Wait, but what, could I please have a ruling on the written submissions then?
You could, yes. However, we're not looking to rush this case either. So I don't think it's never a good idea to, break in the middle of a testimony. However, if Mr. Ellis isn't going to be able to finish his 80 questions, you won't be able to do the cross-examination.
So perhaps we just see how things go. We'll just start and we'll see how things go then.
I guess that's what we should do. And then we can just, because we're not going to get this done today. Obviously, if Mr. Ellis has to leave at by 5, there's no way this can get done. So I think we can talk about the written submissions at the next session.
Is there any merit to?
So will we end in the middle of my questions?
Well, if you can't go past 5, we'll have to,
Okay.
unless you get your, I mean, that's not ideal.
Nope, exactly. I might have to start my questions again next time because
Can
I'll have
we-
to figure out where I'm at.
Can we adjourn now? Is there any
Well,
merit in it?
I was gonna suggest that too. I mean, we're not gonna
We
get
have
this.
to come back. Yeah, we have to come back. So why don't, if seems to be a good spot to adjourn right now. And that-
I'm good with that. Let's pick a new date.
I am also in agreement to pick a new date.
Okay. I can't remember how we picked this date. How, can we pick a new date via email? Or do you want to do this right now?
It can be through email if you want. It's up to you guys.
I'm not sure with regards to the committee administrator. Perhaps we just ask her the question, what is good for her?
For you, the chair, if possible, can we review dates that are available next week? Next week is the week of July 19th.
It'll need to be the week after. I'm in court every day next week. The only day I'm not available the last week of July is Wednesday. I have a 2:30 meeting in the middle of the afternoon, but every other day I have no court appearances that week.
I apologize, staff are not available the last week of July, so we would have to be looking at the short week in August.
The short week in August, I will be available the 5th.
Aaron, you're on mute, sorry.
I'm not available. I have an appointment, a very necessary appointment.
So the week of the 9th to the 13th, I'm available the 10th or the 13th. The other days I'm in court.
I'm also in court some of those days, but did you say the 10th was available?
The 10th is available for me, yes.
I believe I am also available on the 10th of August.
Councilor Code, I apologize if you're chatting. You are on mute right now, so I'm not 100%. That's okay. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, the 10th okay, the 10th, Councilor Gazzola, I mean.
Yeah, the 10th of August, we have committee meeting on the 9th. So,
Oh, okay, then no, I'm not doing the 10th. Sorry.
So the following week, I'm available the 16th, 17th, and 20th.
I'm not available on the 20th.
I'm available all those dates.
Do we have any committee meeting? Do we have any council on the 16th? Councilor Gazzola, I don't have that.
no, that's an open week. So we're
Okay, so how about August 17th? Did we say 17th or 18th? Sorry.
Oh, 17th.
17th, Tuesday?
Yep.
My apologies. I am not available unless we start at 1. If we can do an afternoon hearing, I can accomplish that for you.
We should be able to get this done in an afternoon, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we start at 1 and go straight till 5, then we should be able to get it done.
Okay.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind just holding, I'm just consulting a few other staff.
You know what? We could do the 10th then if we're going to do 1 till. It's just committee sometimes goes very, very late on Monday night. So, but if we were going to do the afternoon on the 10th of August, Aaron, does that work for you? Did you say the 10th was good for you?
Yes. Yes. The 10th is fine.
Mr. Ellis, that's good for you, right? The
Yes,
10th?
it is. Yes, it is.
Councilor Gazzola?
yes, and we'd be looking at, say, a 1 o'clock start then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's manageable.
Yeah.
I just want to confirm if there are any other staff that were supposed to be in attendance on August the 10th, whether or not they are available that day. So just stand by.
Okay, thanks. And while we're waiting, Mr. Ellis, can you confirm what you're going to bring in as evidence?
I will
Based on
be
what we've got?
I will be relying on the Residential Tenancies Act, house rules, needle boxes, the emails, bylaw, and business renewal license
Human rights code.
and human rights code. I think that I'll be relying on almost all of them except for Eric's statement because he's already testified.
So we'll just need to mark them as exhibits just for the purpose of the record. Jennifer, would it be helpful if I renamed them and sent them out to the committee and to Mr. Ellis and Aaron, just to make sure that they're listed as Exhibit A, B, and C as an example, so that we can all refer to them as the same title?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Was that for?
Oh, thank you. I just want to make sure that for the purpose of the record that we're all speaking to the same items. So I don't mind renaming them and sending them out if that makes it easier for those that are in attendance.
I think that would be helpful. Thanks, Diana.
Okay, it appears that August the 10th at 1 p.m. works for everybody in attendance. I can send out an email and meeting invite as I sent out this past week to confirm that time with everybody before the end of Friday.
Okay. Thanks, Ms.
Thank you.
Saunders. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. See you on the 10th.
Thank you.